Hey everybody, thanks so much for coming to my panel, The Case for VGM in Orchestral Programming. Start out, just want to introduce myself. I'm an orchestra conductor specializing in the hybrid programming of VGM and other classical music. I have a bachelor's in music education from James Madison University, you Virginia folks, and I got a master's at Western Michigan University in music performance. And I got a signature distinction in leadership, where my capstone project was something called the Smash Experiment, which was an open rehearsal and performance of music from Super Smash Bros. Melee by chamber orchestra, and audience members played the game while the orchestra played the score in real time and followed their cues. I'm based in New York City, and I have a background in arts administration that starts with the College Light Opera Company in Falmouth, Massachusetts, where I was a business manager. And I worked for a concert production company called Distinguished Concerts International. They produce these giant, like, 200-300 person choir concerts in like Lincoln Center and Carnegie Hall. It was a really fun gig. And then I worked for a couple years as a marketing associate for the Northeast Chamber Orchestra. And I applied all of the marvelous things that I was learning through those experiences to found Press Start Orchestra, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Okay, so who here thinks orchestras should play more video game music? Great, case made, panel's over. Nice. No. So clearly, there's not really a point in making a case to you here. I'm actually here to pitch you a pyramid scheme. Now, what I'm going to do is just talk to you about some of the work that I've done to make this case in other spaces. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the current state of video game music concerts, the biggest challenges around around programming this music, like in a concert format with other repertoire, and then a couple of solutions that I come up with to try to work towards mediating those obstacles. Okay, and so just to sort of set up the scope of discussion here, I'm going to be referring to professional orchestras throughout this presentation. But everything that I say really can apply to most non-VGM community orchestras, concert bands, college, advanced high school concert ensembles. A lot of the challenges are shared, but just for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to talk about professional orchestras. All right. So my dream for the future is that you could walk down the street in New York, past Carnegie Hall, and you see a concert poster with listing music by Mozart and Montgomery, and that's just totally normal. It's not anything weird, it's just classical music of different genres that work really well together. So, for the last couple decades, VGM concerts performed by professional orchestras have been entirely these large multimedia productions. But now we are starting to see a few exceptions, like the Stardew Valley tour is more of a chamber setting, and correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, because all of these sell out before I can get a ticket. But it seems like they don't really use a whole lot, if any, visual media. And I've seen like Eric Roth's Final Fantasy New World production is also out of a chamber setting. It's more intimate. So, but we are starting to sort of see some different variations of commercial video game music concerts, which is awesome. But still, these productions are logistically and financially inaccessible to most orchestras. So, you know, we see orchestras performing this, usually really big state orchestras, or like big five orchestras, have a special event, but even they can only afford to do it like once every now and then. So according to the League of American Orchestras, their 2024 Orchestras at a Glance study, there are approximately 2,200 professional, community, and youth orchestras in the U.S. right now. So I think we all can safely assume that they are not all performing these video game concerts right now. And when programming these giant multimedia VGM concerts for the first time, orchestras initially were hoping that this would bring, that the new audience that this would bring would also then come to their traditional concerts and like become subscribers and whatnot. But that didn't happen. Wow, made myself work really hard with that slide. Okay. So according to a study done by the Wallace Foundation, special programming, as noted, did not yield hope for crossover. Still, when that special programming did attract the chosen target audience, some organizations kept the programming and revised their metric of success. Here, organizations came to value the programming for attracting new audiences, even if they did not attend other programs, and for diversifying the organization's artistic offerings. The study later notes that while repeat ticket buyers were staying about the same while they conducted this study, single ticket buyers had increased significantly. So, yeah, instead of banking on converting them to their main subscription audience, they've seen positive outcomes in catering to multiple audiences with their programs and with programs for a dedicated audience. So who would have thought fans of one genre will only come to see the genre that they're fans of? Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the first challenge. It's artistry and stigmas around what art is in what classical music spaces. So the classical music industry pretty rigidly categorizes instrumental music into pops or not pops. Sort of like you see here. And even in the pop section, they're like blending a whole bunch of different genres that aren't whoever's on the left bubble. I hate this. This perspective is garbage. And yeah, so, well, I lost myself in my notes. But, okay, yeah, but unfortunately, this is how orchestras think of the repertoire. Traditional or pops. But I've been told by some of my mentors, that are conductors or administrators at other orchestras, that they actually don't think there's going to be much work to convince orchestras that programming video game music is a good idea. Like I said before, they want to diversify their audience portfolio. But I'm taking these a step further and encouraging them not to just have video game only concerts. But to program it with the regular repertoire. Video game music holds the artistic value and the cultural cash that's worthy of concert performance, like anything else that they're producing nowadays. And another way to look at this repertoire is this. Orchestras struggle balancing tradition and innovation. That's been a problem for a while. It is still a challenge for many of them. And I mean, video game music not only offers innovative programming potential, as you don't see people doing this very often, with a dedicated audience, hello, but much of the music branches off the same traditions that they've been cherishing for years. I'm going to share one of my favorite examples that I tell folks in the classical space from an interview with the Kyoto-based writer Akinori Sawa. So, in this interview, Shigeru Miyamoto, Takashi Tezuka, and composer Koji Kondo describe a pretty big hiccup ahead of the 1986 release of The Legend of Zelda. So the opening crawl for The Legend of Zelda originally was just accompanied by Maurice Ravel's Bolero. And yeah, this happens quite a lot. You know, sourcing public domain music for scores, it works really well, cheap and quick, and the music's fun. But here's the thing: music enters the public domain in Japan after 50 years, or 50 years after a composer has passed away. And when they were about to release The Legend of Zelda, they did their due diligence. They were like, you know, Ravel's is pretty old. It's probably in the public. It's probably fine. The release of The Legend of Zelda was going to be 49 years and 11 months after Ravel had died. And they were not willing to risk it for that biscuit. So, so Mr. Miyamoto was like, you got to just rewrite this now. So Mr. Kondo pulled an all-nighter to take elements from elsewhere in the game and completely rewrite the title sequence for The Legend of Zelda. So, you know, if you're in a rush to like replace something that you had already written, you're absolutely going to be taking elements from what was already there to make something new. And I could talk about all the similarities, but it really is best if you just go and listen to Ravel's Bolero and then listen to some of the like original Zelda chiptunes for right back to back. You'll hear there's a lot of similarities in the style and in the melodic content. It's really fascinating. So this is just one of many great examples of classical traditions of compositions embedded in game scores. And there are several panels that happened at conventions like this, providing examples like that. And one interesting anecdote, I went to MAGFest last year. It was awesome. I had the pleasure of meeting Eric and Kermit from the Video Game Music Institute, where they develop music theory curriculum around video game soundtracks. And a lot of the concepts that are in that curriculum are in like the music curriculum we see in schools like all over the U.S. So the fact that a school and a curriculum like that can exist at all is probably the strongest evidence of the compositional relationships between this repertoire. Okay, so anyway, back to this whole concept. Something I want to point out about that Wallace Foundation study on crossover programming. The practice of crossover programming that they're referring to is a concert dedicated entirely to a separate genre. So the crossover is like within the context of their season, not just an individual concert. So you know, like a Beatles concert, Symphony of the Goddesses, and whatnot. Programming this music alongside standard symphonic and chamber repertoire hasn't actually been done, at least not at the commercial level. So you know, it hasn't really even been thought about. So that study, we even like can take that with a grain of salt. There's still more work to be done and to experiment with. But how do you make a concert like that? How do you program video game music like that? Well, one of the best ways to figure out an answer to a problem is to just try it yourself. So 2020, I started Press Start Orchestra, and our programs included both video game music and classical canon. And we started with a professional orchestra model. So most, if not all ensembles that are performing VGM are following this cover band or like cover orchestra model, are writing venues performance license, sort of like cover bands of other genres. But this doesn't really work in the pro orchestra industry. So we adopted a pro model to understand like what pro orchestras would need to do. Like what does it take to get like an explicit license to perform this music live, get the sync, the mechanical licensing to record it, live stream it, blah, blah, blah. And so we only, for the first couple of years, and while we were doing this model, we only programmed music from the rights holders that we could actually get written permission from to arrange, perform, record, sync the music, etc. And we sourced arrangements through composer competition. The first one that we did, we gave entrants a list of old school composers to choose from, and then we gave them a list of tracks that we had licensed for this competition. And they were challenged to arrange that track with stylistic elements of the old school composer. And it was cool. The results that we got were really neat. And the second year we did this, we abandoned the old school composer component because we wanted to be careful about implying that we needed to apply these like old school composers to legitimize the art form. We didn't want to accidentally send that message because this music is brilliant as it is. So we abandoned that part, but we still like invited arrangers to add their own stylings and see what happened. So Press Start's first season was composed of these two concerts. The first one was included music from Hollow Knight paired with Shostakovich's second piano trio. And the second concert featured music from Austin Winter's score to Journey with Samuel Barber's Adagio for Strings, Randy Wolf's Concerto for Beatbox, Flute, and String Orchestra, and some selections from Carl Jenkins' Palladio. And this program actually earned the third prize for the 2024 American Prize in Orchestral Programming Professional Division. So, man, I was thrilled when I saw it. Yeah, maybe my mentors were right. It's like, actually, it doesn't really convince, they might not need a lot of convincing that this art form is legitimate and really has a lot to offer their artistic spaces. So yeah, that was awesome. And so I've been like talking this entire time. I'm giving a freaking music panel, so I figured I need to at least play you some music. So I'm just gonna play you a little bit from the split screen video that we made of the first, the winner of the first competition. Gentleman Toba made an arrangement of the Hornet theme from Hollow Knight with influences of Igor Stravinsky. And there's a lot of metric and harmonic elements he threw in there from the Rite of Spring specifically. So, like, this was really hard to conduct. But honestly, making the split screen video, because like we were still 2021, so like we were still making those videos like everybody was. Making the split screen video was harder than conducting it. Lining up all of those like different mixed meters and the entrance, there's a lot of different entrances, so it was just really colorful and really well done, but yeah, the video is pretty tough, but yeah, here's a little sample. First time we had 4 bars on the same meter in a row. here's a little bit more of it from the live performance that we did of it in New York. I had a lot of coffee before that performance. Quote-ish. Right. Yeah, so that was a lot of fun to put together. Thank you. So this year, we opened membership to all New Yorkers for our first season as a community cover orchestra. As I'm sure many of you here know, there are, and correct me if I get the numbers a little bit wrong, but there are 3 GSOs in the DC area right now. And each of them have like 100 plus members right now. Like all 3 of them do, right? Pretty much? Yeah. So guess how many of these orchestras are in New York City? Yeah, now there's 1. There was 0. Absolutely none. And the closest ensembles are in New Jersey and in Norwalk. But New Yorkers just like, don't leave the city. It's a thing. They're really worried about it. Like New Jersey, you might as well ask them to be like commuting to the Midwest. Anyway, so I figured there'd probably be a demand for this kind of experience in the city. Our interest form had 40 submissions in 1 week, and right now it's sitting at a little over 115 responses. So. But I haven't abandoned the advocacy for pro and other like standing orchestras to perform video game music. As I realized that actually instead of building a new professional orchestra from scratch, it would probably be easier to focus on pre-existing orchestras because, well, they already have those resources, right? But then, seeing that there's probably a demand for just like all New Yorkers just play this music and experience it like that. We felt that we'd actually be doing a lot more good with Press Start itself by opening up the membership for those experiences. While I go and continue popping around on the other mission. So the second challenge is resources and licensing. So the sheet music that's available to like purchase right now, there's almost no professional or advanced music. Most of the stuff that you'll find on places like Alfred and JW Pepper and whatnot is intended for school ensembles, and a lot of it is like grade 2 or 3. I think like the World of Warcraft one might be like a 4 or 5, and it's pretty like accurate. It's not very watered down, but for the most part, that isn't the case. And actually, that's another incentive for orchestras to perform this music. That industry gets really fixated on offering like classical music to children in schools, like as a mean of creating their future audience. They're like, we got to put music in schools, so then like they'll come to our concerts and like, we still have an interest in our music. And video game music is right now starting to be used as a recruiting opportunity. Like schools are starting to play this a lot more to get students interested. But for the kids who first picked up their instrument to play music from their favorite game, like that happens after they graduate. Those orchestras aren't playing that music that actually got them into classical music in the first place. So yeah. I mean, fortunately, the rapid increase in gamer symphony orchestras over the U.S. Is solving a lot of this problem by allowing us to like perform this music. Is really wonderful. But licensed sheet music for the advanced ensemble is still kind of an obstacle for folks. So there is no infrastructure for licensing video game music for concert performance, or at least not like a clear, easy way. I guess that is infrastructure. Anyway, it's not the medium for which it was really originally intended. I mentioned earlier, like cover bands performing covers under venues blanket performance license. The orchestra industry just doesn't operate that way. Compositions for them, they're written for concert performance, and that's like their final form. They're registered with the PROs as a concert piece. If they were wanting to arrange that music, they would need to have a custom license, which requires them to make a custom agreement with the rights holders because it's derivative work, and nobody over in that industry has time for that. And again, some of my mentors said that there probably isn't a whole lot of advocacy to actually be done, but most of the work is going to be in just getting the orchestras the opportunity to perform it, like to be able to perform it at all. That's the big trouble. So that's why I'm forming a publishing company to solve this issue, to fill in those gaps, to provide, basically be like a Boozy and Hawks, but for video game music. And right now, I'm working on putting a couple licenses together, and we're on track to have our first products on the market for rental this year. Keep an eye out for that. Our target clients right now are currently indie publishers and composers, as there's so much amazing music in the indie scene that's flourished over the last decade or two, and we hope that we'll attract the attention of larger companies too, as our catalog sort of grows into a really strong portfolio from those collaborations. So pro orchestras are some of the most risk-averse businesses on the planet. Like the best way for me to advocate for the programming of video game music is with real-world examples and data. So I wanted to invite you to complete the survey that's on that QR code that's under your butt. While I take questions, and like the results of this survey will really help me convince orchestras that there is an audience for this and that they will show up. The more honest input that I have, the better. So I'll pause and take any questions. Yes?
So what's going on like culture-wise in the video game industry that's making them so tight with their IP in this regard? It's not like they don't have legal restrictions. I mean, the video game industry is larger than Hollywood and Broadway combined. Mm-hmm. And I'm conservatory trained. player, and I played shitloads of Hans Zimmer and John Williams, and like you get that music listening.
Mm-hmm.
And there's big serious composers that are writing for these video game companies, Christopher Tin, people like that, writing for these companies. Why is it so easy to license Broadway music and Hollywood film soundtrack music, and so hard to license video games? What's going on there? Is that something that's just determined by the companies that want their music out there? They want to control their IP more granularly, or what's the deal?
That's an awesome question. From what I've seen, it's just not worth the trouble in a lot of cases. So for you mentioned there's plenty of Hans Zimmer music and John Williams music that we could play, it's just fine, from movie scores. But John Williams and Hans Zimmer are personally interested in that. I mean, they're conducting some of these concerts themselves, and Kristen even does that sometimes. So of the video game composers, he's probably the furthest along this track in getting us music that we can play like that. So but video game companies, they kind of, I guess they just have other priorities, and especially a lot of composers they seem to actually be really open to their music being performed and arranged and whatnot, but especially the AAA companies, in most cases, the publishing rights of that music belongs with the company, and it doesn't belong with the composers. And the company itself, they wouldn't make, the money that they would make from that would be a drop in the bucket for them. So there's really, it doesn't make much business sense for them to do this. And they have the rights, so. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess I just, I just kind of curious what goes on in their legal department or whatever. They don't want to work like this, but it's easy enough for, Paramount to be willing to do that. It just, obviously, as you say, it's not a priority for them. I'm just kind of wondering if there's any sort of reason for that. In your experience, when trying to start a publisher or whatever, it's are there legal guys different to deal with than the movie industry or other forms of licensed music that you can get?
At the bigger companies where I've reached out to their legal departments, I just don't get a response. Yeah, and I can't really speak yet very well to what's actually going on in that specific area. But I see it at MAGFest, and here there's a panel by some video game lawyers that they would be really good to ask if you run into them about this. At MAGFest, unfortunately I can't remember who was running the panel, but I think somebody actually asked a similar question about this. And one person used to work in the department that would process the incoming reports, performance reports of music and things, and it was just a lot. It was basically just became a lot of busy work, just dealing with that. So not very glamorous to that department either.
So you mentioned getting licenses, getting permission from some composers, and sort of dodging this issue. And most of those are smaller indie composers and everything like that. Do you feel like with this continued renaissance we're having of indie games and indie composers, your Lena Raines, your Austin Wintory's, your Toby Foxes, you're kind of going to be able to circle around and end up with what you're after, even though you're not going to get Nintendo's permission or anything like that? Maybe getting Undertale is just as good.
Oh yeah, I mean all those that you listed, I am after for sure. And conversations have been happening. But that is the idea that after doing this work with those folks who are also interested, we'll start building a portfolio that we can present to larger companies and find those just right people just those right people who will pull the strings to make the licensing that we need happen. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm in a community band with a conductor who's very good, but is also a retired music teacher who won't touch VGM at all.
Mm.
And part of her reason for not touching it, she said that she can't find any band music that's easily accessible. Does your publishing company that also have band music and as well as music, or are there ways where to find band?
Yeah. Actually, let's see. Alfred Publishing has a lot of video game orchestrations. A lot of them are. There's a couple. It kind of depends on what you're looking for too. There's not a huge selection, and you can find those on like any of the other sites y'all may be getting repertoire from, like JW Pepper or other retailers. But Alfred Publishing has some. Where's this? Yeah, a little slide. Yeah, they look like that. Yeah, and I can connect with you afterwards too, and like go to the website with you. I'd be happy to do that. Okay. So I'm happy to take any more questions outside. I gotta get out of here so that Thomas doesn't kill me. But I did want to just leave you with one more thing. Video game scores contain some of the greatest contemporary music of our time. And I know... And so I know, drives me nuts, but the statement, like, it's technically redundant. The way it's written, contemporary, like, that does mean the music of our time, right? But, like, in the classical world, contemporary is used quite broadly. Like, I still hear people classifying pieces that were written in, like, the mid-20th century as contemporary, while we're sitting here in, like, knee-deep in the 21st. Like, so that's why I say it like that. And there are several like fantastic productions, like celebrating the soundtracks of our lives. I absolutely love those, and I want them to keep going forever. But they're out of reach for so many like local orchestras. And it's time to give music ensembles the resources that they need to build relationships with their gaming communities and honor the cultural impact that this music has had on our generation. Thanks so much for coming. Appreciate it.